All right, it's day 47 of Cleaning Piece 3. I can barely say it, where I don't say negative things about others for 90 days. It's been 323 days since my last confession. Well, basically, I had to shoot two other films, and I went twice to Istanbul, Turkey, where I was shooting both films simultaneously, back to back. And then also, I was paused because of that and school and other things. And I promised myself that I would start this back up again as soon as I was doing my current class, which was called the Cinema of Constraints, where we were going to work on poetic cinema. And we literally started that last week, so I'm sticking to my word. And I'm going to continue this out, and it's going to be very difficult. One, because I've got a cat chewing wires next to me that's very distracting. The other, because it's so hard not to say negative things about others when you don't have a proper definition of what's negative. One thing that I noticed is that when you're working in cinema or you're working as an educator, you're constantly having to give critiques, you're constantly having to communicate with others, and what does and does not qualify Bomsey? Bomsey, come here. Bomsey, come here. Stop that. Bomsey, come here. Why during this? Why? What does and does not qualify as negativity? And so I've decided to give myself a very specific constraint, which is that when you're giving a critique on work, that's not negative. It's actually a very positive thing. You're helping someone move forward, you're giving them possibilities. And although it might sting a little bit if you give something that's very exacting, it really depends on the person and how they're taking it. There have been many times in my life where a mentor or an advisor gave me some advice that I really didn't want to hear. But once I heard it, it really made me think about it. It didn't mean that I needed to take the advice. But once I did hear it, it sort of became incorporated into who I was as a person. And I could understand the perspective from where they were coming from. And so in that way, I don't think that when people tell you their truths about things, it's necessarily negative. And so people's perspectives aren't negative. Their opinions aren't negative. I think the main thing to really think about for yourself is, are you putting something out in the world that's malicious somehow, or actually has ill intent? And where is it coming from? And I really think that that is what was Yoko Ono's intent when she said, don't put negative thoughts out into the world for 90 days and see what happens. The other major thing that has been happening in these 323 days is the revolution, the first female-led protest in Iran. And when I first started this, Cleaning Piece 3 was when the upheaval started happening in the Ukraine. And although I understood people's sadness and anger and difficulty in dealing with how to not say negative things about that. It was a whole new perspective when it was about my native country and where I had come from, and to not say negative things. But now that I've had a little bit of distance from it, I can also see that although what's happening in the country is horrific and it's horrible what's happening to some of the innocent citizens, and how they're being treated, and how they're not being given an opportunity to speak or to protest, and they're being silenced in different ways. I don't necessarily have anything that's negative to say about a specific person, or an individual that I would know. And I think that when you're talking about governments or entities that are larger than one individual, if you're going to state that something's wrong or something needs to be changed, or the way that they're treating others is not appropriate, I don't think that that's being negative. Again, I think it goes back to, does it actually have ill intent? Does it have malicious intent? Where is the space that you're coming from? And I really think that that is the sort of constraint, when it's coming to not speaking negatively to others for 90 days and to see what happens. I'm not really sure where this film is going to go or how I'm going to put it all together. This past week, I was thinking about poetic cinema and advising the students about how to come up with images and text and how to combine them together, how to honor a poet's words, and which comes first in their minds, and maybe how to subterfuge that and come up with new possibilities for how we come up with images or language in how we construct visual poems in our heads. And so I gave them a kind of strange automatic writing exercise where I gave them all these images of like Brad Pitt and Cookie Monster, and then they had to write in response. And I don't know if it was necessarily successful, but later on I let them know that, oh, this was to open up your minds to thinking about images first rather than to think about language first. And then, ironically, I actually read an article which was talking about Iran and how originally and throughout history, Iranian art oftentimes had an image and text going alongside with it. And so it's something part of the artistic culture that has continued throughout time, where they would have an image and language juxtaposed with one another. And one of the examples that this article gave was a carpet, and how there was this poem, Bordering the Carpet by Hafez, the Persian poet. And within the carpet were all these birds. And the poem dealt with the birds as well, but that the image didn't necessarily mirror what the language said, and the language didn't necessarily mirror what the image was. But when the two were combined together, it gave a third sort of feeling. And it was that feeling that sort of Iranian artists throughout time have been playing with, this sort of idea between image and text. And I thought that was really interesting, because that's something that I've consistently been exploring. And it's something I've been trying to encourage other people to explore if they can. So I'm not sure if that has something to do with this film. That maybe cleaning piece 3 and not speaking negatively about others for 90 days is actually not so much about what I'm doing, about not having malicious intent, but what I'm able to find within cinema by doing this. That maybe I was supposed to find a new way of doing this. And so we had the students sort of exploring performance this week, and using instruments, and getting into their bodies and modulating their voices and tempo, and thinking about sound dynamics. I'm not sure where it's all going, but somehow I feel like it's all interrelated. Anyway, that's day 47, day 48. I think it's day 48.